Okay, quite possibly the simplest recipe we're gonna make is the spicy fried cabbage. To do this recipe, you're gonna need cabbage, olive oil, your spice of choice. If you want spicy, I recommend that spicy La Grille Montreal steak. A big bowl will help. Your olive oil and your big cooker. Okay, that's it. You can get away without the big bowl, but the rest you need. We start with the cabbage. Step one, if there's any leaves on the outside, which are like black or damaged, we're gonna remove those so that we get down to a nice clean green cabbage. Okay, now we got our nice green clean cabbage. We're actually gonna cut it. Cutting the cabbage can be pretty easy. We're never gonna use the stem or the bottom. So what I do is I start by just cutting that off flat, just to give myself a nice flat surface for the now cabbage doesn't roll on me. Okay, now we just do the Martha Stewart version, like the web video I showed you. We're gonna cut this in slices, about an inch or so thick, right? So see, we're just gonna start like that. See, that's the thickness that we're after, right? When we're all done. Okay, so we're just gonna go through our whole cabbage, making those discs. If one's a little thicker than the other, like this one I made a little thicker, that's fine too, doesn't matter. You don't wanna go too thin like a coleslaw. Now, bear in mind, cabbages are a thick vegetable, so you can't do this with a paring knife. You're gonna need something, 7, 8 inches or bigger. A vegetable knife, a carving knife, a big old santoku like this one. Whatever you choose, just make sure you have a big one. Okay, so when you're done, you've got these discs of cabbage. Got a little thick. When you get to the far end and you're like, oh, I can't stand that up anymore, just lay it down and do the same thing this way. Okay, that's it. Now this part that has no stem, these are the perfect length if you put them in a big bowl. You just break them up a little bit. You should end up with nice strips of cabbage, that look like that. Our bigger discs, we don't want to imagine having that in our mouth, right? That's just too long. So what we do to avoid that is take some of our bigger discs here, and I'm just gonna cut them in half. See, there's that core we don't want. So that comes out, we're not gonna eat that. And while I'm at it, boom, I cut it in half. Now that's the longest strip I have, right? And that's gonna shrink nicely. Break it up, break it up, break it up. And then we're just gonna go through and do the rest of our cabbage. Remove any of the tough core. Cut it so that it's not too long. Put it in our big bowl. We're gonna wash it in this bowl. Okay, yes, you do have to wash it. If you get down to a hard nubby core like this and you don't want it, just leave it aside, okay? If you don't have a giant bowl like this to use, you can just put it right into the cooker and then we can wash it in the cooker, okay? I'm gonna finish cutting this up. We'll be back with washing in a second. Cut up into pieces that we can envision once they shrink a little bit, actually eating them, okay? The cabbage should be mostly clean because it's mostly internal leaves, but we still always wash our fruits and vegetables before we cook them. And in this case, it's nice and easy. That was the hardest part of the work. It's done. From here on out, it's a piece of cake. Because the good news is, while we have to wash it, we don't really need to dry it because we really want to have moisture in the recipe anyway. So I'm just going to literally cover this, a little less pressure so I don't splash water everywhere. Going to massage the cabbage. Give it a massage. Sensual shiatsu massage. I just want to get the water in between everything. This also will help to break up some of the bigger chunks that are still together, like 3, 4, 5 leaves together. They'll break up. There we go. So now we get a nice full thing of water. We're just gonna give it CPR a little bit. That's fairly enough. And we're just going to drain the water out. And again, it doesn't matter if we don't drain it all because we're adding water to the recipe anyway. We just don't want to splash water all over the kitchen. Okay, there we have some washed cabbage. Okay, come to me. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the pan. Come with me to the pan. We're going to go straight to the pan. Here we go. Okay, so I've got a pan here. As you can see, I've already put a little olive oil or a fair bit of olive oil in the bottom. Okay. And I've set it to around medium, 4 or 5-ish. We can take our time here. We don't want to burn it, right? That's important. Jumbo cooker, olive oil, cabbage. That's it. I like to put in about half, breaking it up as I go. See, there's a big chunk that didn't get really broken up well, so I'm just gonna do one of that. Now, before I add all the cabbage, I'm gonna add a little more olive oil. When I say a little bit, I mean a nice, tasty amount. Ooh, look at that. Look at that. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit of my spice now. And when I say a little bit, again, I mean a goodly, tasty amount. Then we continue. More cabbage. It's gonna look like this pan is over full. That is okay. Because once this starts cooking, this cabbage is gonna lose all of its crispy hardness, and it's just gonna sink into the spicy olive oily juices and simmer there and turn into a soft, spicy pile of awesome. Right, so just stack it all up. Now that we've got all of our cabbage in the pan, can you guess what the next step is? It's more good flavor. Olive oil. Whee! Again, I can't really stir it right now, but that's okay. The flavors are still gonna cook in there. Spicy stuff. Spicy. Remember, if you're using this Montreal Le Grill, and if you didn't get the one with no salt added, it already has salt in it. So we're literally just using one spice on this. If you weren't using that one, you might add salt or something else here. Okay, last step. Again, we don't want it to burn, and although the cabbage has a lot of juice, so it has a lot of liquid, and it's gonna let it go, it's not gonna let it go immediately. So we're just gonna take a little water, okay, maybe half a cup of water, add it into there, and we're gonna cover it. That's gonna turn this thing into a sauna, and that steam is gonna cook all the cabbage, not just the stuff which is touching the pan. Oh, you gotta go in there. You gotta get it down. There we go. Okay, and don't worry that it's touching the lid right now, because again, it's gonna steam, shrink, and then we're gonna be able to stir it. That's it. We're gonna check back in about 15-20 minutes. It should be starting to shrink, and eventually we're gonna have the ability to stir it. And our only mission here on out now is to make sure that it has a little bit of moisture in there, so it never gets dry and burns and sticks to the pan, and then cook it till we're happy with it. Okay, check in a little bit. It's only been 5 minutes, but I just wanted to point out, if you listen, you hear the bubbling, right? So we just want to be aware and do a quick check, make sure we can still see some moisture on the bottom there. Good, I still see water, we're okay. If you hear that much bubbling, you could be losing water. If you keep your lid on nice and tight, you'll probably be okay. But feel free to add water or adjust the heat down if you need to. You know, too much moisture isn't really a problem, but remember, we're not making soup. We just want to see a little bit on the bottom of the pan like we saw. 15 minutes in, you can already see it's no longer pressed against the top of the lid, so it's already shrunk. Let's have a quick look. We hear see all that steam? That's all liquid we don't have anymore. But now we're getting to the point where I can actually start to stir just a little bit. And all I want to do is just make sure that that oil and spice slides around to touch more than just the topmost leaves. You can already see it's starting to get translucent and soft, right? And I check here, look at this. See how much water there is in there now? There's more because the cabbage is starting to sweat. So we've probably done a pretty good job. From here on out, it's just cooking flavor, right? So if I want more spicy, I'm gonna add more Montreal steak spice. If I want more, you know, oil, I can add a little bit more oil. I like the looks of this. I'm gonna add just a touch more oil, just because that's one of the flavors I like. And a touch more spice, excuse me. Thank you. And that's it. For the next half hour, 40 minutes, we're just gonna check in every 10 or so minutes, give it a stir. It's gonna get easier and easier. We're gonna check that the liquid is still there. We're gonna add water if it's not. And yeah, then before we know it, we're gonna come back and this stuff will no longer be white. It'll be more translucent. You can see it starts to lose its whiteness as it cooks. See? And it's gonna all look like that. And then we're gonna have awesome cabbage. Okay, check in soon. 2 minutes, we're losing a lot of steam. So I've lowered the temperature down to around 2 just to keep it at a nice simmer. So 25 minutes, you can see the color's changing. It's not as bright white anymore, it's more yellow. That's that olive oil getting into the translucent cabbage. Check our moisture situation, it's good. The only reason I'm poking my head back in here is I just realized, you know what I forgot back in step 1? You know what makes this recipe even better? Onions. So I grabbed some onions. I'm going to throw them in here. Should have done this back at the beginning, but I'm starting them 25 minutes in. No problem. Pro tip, notice I've cut them a lot smaller than usual so that they're going to cook quicker. If I had done it at the beginning, I could have had larger chunks of onion. You can always cut them to whatever size you like, but since they're getting to the game late, I've made them purposefully a little bit smaller in order to make sure that they cook in a timely way. So I'm just going to add those in, do my signature, a little bit of olive oil, a little bit more spice, stir them in so that they're nice and covered by hot steaming cabbage everywhere, and let those cook. Another tip, although it doesn't really affect it does affect the flavor. You can also replace any of the water you see me using with something else. Like for example, you might want to throw in a little bit of beer or near beer if you're calorically worried about it. And it's going to add a different kind of flavor, but a good one. If you like the flavor of beer, I do recommend cooking with near beer. Okay, those onions are incorporated. We see them here. Our liquid situation is good. If I want more, I'll add more. Okay, the lid goes back on. We are 25 minutes in, and I'm not even going to bother checking it again for another 10-15 minutes. Now we're in. We're still on low heat. I had to add a little bit of water because it was almost dried out because it's really going now. But you can see the whole thing's turning yellow and soft, and it's easy to stir. You can even see I got a little bit of brown on some of these because they were starting to burn a little bit on the bottom before I added the water. So we're almost there. All we do now is we just cook it until it's nice and soft all the way through so there's no more crispy bits. We taste it to make sure we like the seasoning. But basically, yeah, we're done. I like mine done a little well done, a little more mushy. So I'm gonna add a little more water, a little more spice. Do it for another 15 or so minutes. But then that's it. You've got it. Crispy, spicy fried cabbage. Almost no calories, guilt-free, good stuff. Time, 1 hour, 10 minutes. That's exactly how I like it now. I've turned the stove off, added just a little bit more water so it doesn't burn. You can also just remove the pan from the heat. But that's it. I've stirred in the last of my spice, the last of my oil. All there is to do now is to let it cool, put it into containers, and then eat it. Okay, there we are, done.